Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for waiting patiently as we got all of the technology set up again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. We intend to learn and to teach, to remind and be reminded, to benefit and be benefited, to improve and be improved, and to encourage holding fast to the Book of God and the way of his messenger, and to call unto guidance and to direct towards good, hoping for the countenance of God and his pleasure and his proximity and his reward. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. Ameen. So it's really nice to be back in our new Wedge's office. Last week we were over there, this week we're over here. So trying out different spots in the room. And I think I like this one this way better. I like it this way better. Alhamdulillah. Especially, yeah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, it's you guys make it beautiful. You guys, when you come, you make it beautiful. So alhamdulillah. We had an assignment last week, and it was a very interesting assignment. Does anyone, it's written up here on the screen, so you guys could cheat and just read it, but does anyone remember what it was without cheating? Yeah? Yeah.
Pure drinking and
Yeah.
drinking it and reflecting the surah.
Mm-hmm.
That could be an episode.
Mm-hmm. MashaAllah. Yeah, so it was pairing a drink that was pure, that was inspired by the verse about وَمِزَاجُهُ مِن تَسْنِيمٍ, right? With an activity that was itself purifying. So a pure drink with a purifying activity. And it could be reflection as a purifying activity, tafakkur. It didn't have to be that. It could have been Qur'an, it could have been dhikr, it could have been anything else. Did anyone get to do the assignment? Yes. Alhamdulillah.
I drank pure origin coffee,
Uh-huh.
and I was actually reading the Surah al-Mutaffifīn, but I was actually thinking about the meaning of it.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't just reciting it.
Yes. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah.
I didn't put sugar or cream.
It was not mixed, it was pure.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I found this assignment to be very interesting and
Mhm.
very tangible. But I felt is it تنافس المتنافسون في my own race, or because when I was reading Quran or hearing other surahs سارعوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم يعني يسابقوا إلى مغفرة. So I felt kind of lonely, like I didn't want to drink it alone. I didn't want to do this without someone. And like when you're drinking something pure, it tastes better with someone.
MashaAllah.
And it felt like the need for someone else's support, like when somebody's down, someone's hungry. Felt the need more for a team. So that's why it was very
interesting. So in the context of pure drinks, we're only talking about pure drinks here. If there's a pure drink that you enjoy, don't you find that you enjoy it more with others? We are naturally social drinkers of pure drinks. I'm not talking about the other kind of social drinking. I'm talking about we like to, if there's something that we enjoy like that, right? We do naturally want to do that with others. And there's lots of stories that will send me on a tangent, but I will not go on that tangent. Sophia is not here to give me a good look to remind me about time. But I'll just say that many a person has become a coffee drinker because of their spouse, or a tea drinker because of their spouse, or a something else drinker because of their spouse, because it was joining someone else's being, a company who enjoys something and then drinking that pure drink together, and as an enjoyment. So, yeah, so even in the verse, in terms of, so the way that I've heard it explained is when it comes to matters of the material life, we don't compete with each other at all. But when it comes to matters of the akhirah, we compete in the sense of not like, I need to get ahead of anyone. I'm not trying to get ahead of anyone else. It's more like if I see someone doing something good, then it inspires me too. And then it's like, then I'm going to try to do, it's going to propel me to do the thing that I wanted. It may not even be the same thing, right? It may not even be the exact, so one person, we see them maybe memorizing Qur'an, and for us, that's a reminder to review our Qur'an, so it's not that I'm competing to get ahead of anyone. That's not how we do it. But like, as you mentioned, to be in the company of people who can help you do this. And definitely striving collectively is easier than striving alone. Absolutely. And so when you were drinking and feeling like, I wish there was someone to share this moment with, I think that's natural. And I think that's why like being in good company is important when we can do it. And subhanAllah, like literally eating a meal together or sitting together, as the hadith says, people who sit together for the sake of Allah is one of the categories of people who enjoy the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Literally just for sitting. It's like, but your intention is because when I'm in your company, it helps us both do better in our paths to God. So absolutely, it makes it easier. And I want to say that in like with intention, we should seek spiritual company, suhbah. And also when we find ourselves without it, to fill it in as much as we're able with the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's already with us. So that's one thing just to keep in mind, is a lot of times we're thinking, I need to try to be with God. I need to try to be with God. But if you just put in your mind instead, he's with me right now. Like I like take myself out of the situation and put the focal point on Allah. Like he's already with me. He's like fully with me. He's 100% with me. He's closer to me than my jugular vein. Then and just kind of like allow yourself to enjoy that or feel that reality, because it is a reality. He's actually like fully with you in every breath. And so in those moments of like, I want an encouraging person, because we do. I'm not saying of like, oh, you should be so strong, you don't need anyone. No, we actually need each other. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this hadith that tells us to come together, to love each other for Allah, to sit together, to visit each other, to expend of ourselves for each other. Like so much of our instruction is about doing this deen together. But at the same time, we're not always together. So we're going to find ourselves sometimes in solitude. And as our teachers have said, is don't let your solitude be lonely. Don't let your solitude be lonely. You can be alone without being lonely. And this week's assignment is about that. This week's inshallah assignment is about more about, I guess, deepening the way that we are in the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So maybe this week's assignment might help last week's assignment, inshallah, a little bit. Yeah.
Alone.
Yes.
While you're competing with yourself, or you're competing with your other Muslim friends?
No, with yourself. With yourself. Yeah. I'm trying to be a better person today than I was yesterday. I'm trying to grow in whatever capacity I'm able to grow. And our journeys are so unique to us. They're so unique. Even when two journeys look very similar, they're not the same. And for that reason, like we can empathize, but I've never been in your shoes. You know what I mean? And you've never been in my shoes. But we may share aspects that are similar. We share inspiration. We share those things, alhamdulillah, from each other. But but it's very, very unique. And by design, and I mean, we have it like from our signs, from the signs of Allah is in our own bodies. And like the fingerprint is so telling that it's literally like something that can identify one human being from another human being, at a crime scene is the fingerprint. And like that, I mean, there's as many fingerprints. How many fingerprints are there? How many different kinds of fingerprints are there in the world? No two people have the same fingerprint. Yeah. And our journeys are just like that. Our journeys, then we have to be careful even when we give advice to others, because like we're not in their shoes. We're really not. We can observe it and we can give it, like have goodwill, make dua for them. If we have insights we want to share, that's fine. But also simply just to recognize that that's what you're going through is also very unique. And it's unique to you. And just, I think it's important that we are able to appreciate that, because we don't have like a mold that this is the mold, and if you fit the mold, then you belong here. And if you don't fit the mold, you don't belong here. There's, from the different challenges we face, from the different like places that we come from. And I mean, we have it even in the Quran. We didn't create the nations in tribes, except that we should know one another. It's like the purpose of ta'aruf. Our diversity is like so that we get to appreciate. Really, ta'aruf is about appreciation. And so there is an aspect that like when we come together in all our diversity, we can support each other. There's aspects of your life that can encourage mine. There's aspects of my life that might encourage yours. And at the same time, your journey is special, your journey is unique, and your journey is ultimately between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In as much as we spend it with so many other people at different phases of it, the one who's the door that you can always knock on, the phone call that will never be rejected, the person, not the person, astaghfirullah, the one who is available anytime in the middle of the night, when you need someone, to the early hours of the morning, to like odd hours, right? When no one else should you be calling at that time, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who we can call upon him in these moments where no one else is available to us. And again, so when we have those moments in our life, and learn how to be alone with him without being lonely. And we can talk about that in a little bit, inshallah. So that was the assignment. And it was I'm going to talk a little bit, I didn't mention all the details to it. I'm going to pull up the verses real quick. So where it says, and this was from last week's tafsir. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسقون من رحيق مختوم ختامه مسك وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون ومزاجه من تسنيم عينا يشرب بها المقربون. So in this section, I'm going to cover some of the tafsir again because it's connected to the allegorical commentary. Now, I didn't get to mention certain details. Ibn Abbas, he mentioned that tasneem is also what is alluded to in the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Sajdah, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٍ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And that no soul knows what comfort is kept hidden for it as a recompense for that which they used to do. So this tasneem, he is connecting it to this verse. Others said that tasneem is a spring whose waters are mixed with the rahiq makhtum, with the pure wine that is sealed, for the companions of the right, but from which those who are brought nigh, which are the muqarrabun, right? So companions of the right is ashabul yamin. The muqarrabun are the higher level, like the utmost level in paradise. Again, they drink it in its most purest form. That's where the assignment came from, is because some people will get to drink it and it's mixed with rahiq al-makhtum. Other people will drink it just as tasneem. And so Imam al-Razi, he says that tasneem, there's a third position. Okay, so I didn't get to say this. The third position was that it's not a drink, a physical drink. It's not tasneem is, he says, the knowledge of God and the delight of gazing upon the face of God. That's what the tasneem is here. And so he says, so the muqarrabun drink from nothing other than tasneem, for they gaze upon none other but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The muqarrabun, this is the highest levels of the believers in paradise. They will be in a state of always gazing upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they experience this in full purity, like this, because their hearts were pure in this life, they get a continuance, like a state of constantly seeing God in the next life. Ashab al-Yamin, on the other hand, they gaze upon the delights of the created things of paradise. So they also enjoy what they see, but they look at all the created things, like the rivers and the palaces and all the things that we know about that's going to be in paradise. So they enjoy and they gaze upon the delights of the created, though paradisal world, and sometimes also upon the face of God. And so thus he says they drink a mixture. They drink and they have this enjoyment. And so what is this drink? This ayn is actually the gaze. It's actually what they're drinking with their hearts. And then another commentary also mentions that tasneem is actually the highest level of mahabba. It's an experience of love in paradise for God that is either fully pure because their heart was pure in its love of God in this world, or it is mixed with other things because they ultimately loved God, but they also loved other things too. You know? And so again, the muqarrabun, they have it in the most purest form. And then the ashab al-yamin, or the abrar, the righteous and the other dwellers of paradise, they have it in the mixed form. Regardless, these are two really amazing delights in paradise. Whichever drink anyone gets is a great drink. But the indication of فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ is it's actually telling us, don't look at that impossible thing and think it's not for me. Don't look at that pure drink that's for the highest level and think, okay, that's just for those special people over there. I'm just going to live my life the way it is. It actually says, no, strive for the best drink of paradise. It's whether it's a drink of love or a drink of the gaze upon Allah or a drink of the actual drink. What it's saying is it's an indication of the rank of this person. It's like the highest proximity to God for the believers. And so you can say that this is one of the verses that tells us to have himma aliyah, have a high spiritual aspiration. Have a really high spiritual aspiration. Don't say like, if I can just get tipped over the wall of the first level of paradise, I'll be happy. Of course, anyone in paradise is going to be happy. But Allah is telling us, aim for this, فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ, for this drink. And it's really a station. And so it will look, subhanAllah, again, our fingerprints are very different. So our journeys are going to be very different. But this rank is something all of us can aim for, no matter what place in our lives we're in, what test we're facing, what's in front of us right now. This is something we can all hope for and strive for. Specifically to strive. Like tanafus is like I'm gonna work for this. So I'm going to go to the allegorical commentary for last week's verses. The allegory is, for those who, it's not the tafsir. Allegory is not tafsir. So again, for those who are joining for the first time, it's a metaphor. We did the tafsir for the verses last week. Today, we're going to cover the metaphors or the metaphorical lessons that Imam Ibn Ajibah takes from the verses that we can benefit from in our own lives. And I'm just going to say he goes deep into subjects I normally don't present on, even if I read about them, because they're usually not, if this class wasn't on YouTube, it'd be easier, but I decided today I'm actually going to share it because it's there, it's in the books of tafsir, and if we don't understand it, then we can say, okay, I don't understand it. But I do think there's benefit in what is being said, even as just this exists. What the Mufassirin are saying, these categories of people, they're not imaginary, they're real. And these realities are people in different generations are speaking to the same thing. So even the names that are being quoted, they're from different places and times, and they look at the same set of verses and they're coming back to the same metaphor. So Imam Ibn Ajibi, he mentions that Imam al-Wartaji, he said, Kitabun marqum. So we're going to go back to this, or verse number 20 here. Kitabun marqum. Yashhaduhu al-muqarrabun. Witnessed by the muqarrabun. Muqarrabun, it's translated here as those brought nigh. For those who don't know Old English, that just means those brought near to God. Witnessed by those who are brought near to God. So the allegory, Imam al-Wartaji, he says that Kitabun Marqum is a book that is inscribed with the inscription of Allah. His inscription is for pre-eternal happiness and never-ending wilaya. That's like intimate friendship with God. This book with him is not for anyone but the muqarrabun that are directly spoken to and are shown unseen realities. So this is hard to understand as it is. It will make more sense when I mention what the next Shaykh says. Abu Uthman al-Maghribi, he mentions that which Allah allows to flow upon your limbs from good and evil, He inscribes with them the qada and the qadr. Okay. And the believer does not fear what Allah has inscribed. And here what's being talked about is destiny. Okay, like the idea of the divine decree. Because he sees it as the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he doesn't see any trickery in it or around it. This person, by the way, who sees these things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says this is for the generality of believers or generality of creation, meaning general Muslims. They understand the divine decree in this way. That it's like things that have literally been inscribed upon their limbs, right? And upon everything around them. And then he says, but for the khawas, who are the khawas? Khas is special, khawas is plural of special. So the very special people, the awliya and the ahlul haqa'iq, the people of spiritual realities. He says, for them, Allah has inscribed upon everything He has created. And he says, only the muqarrabeen are shown that inscription. And they are the honored ones. Like Allah honors them by revealing His inscription, the marqum, the raqam, on everything in creation. And whoever witnesses that inscription from the muqarrabun, so now he's talking about what the muqarrabun see, they know people according to the inscription upon them. They can look at someone and know this person has wilaya. And they can look at someone else and know this person has adawa. This person's an actually enemy of God, like or an enemy to them even. So these things are revealed to them. And he says this is an honor and a farasa, a type of spiritual insight, of which Umar radiallahu anhu, for example, had. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually said about him, and I'm going to read the whole hadith because it's mentioned here partially, and I want to read the full one. It's going to come up again, and it's going to, I think I wrote it partially in Arabic, and then the rest is in translation. It will come up again, inshallah, because I know it's in the rest of the commentary. But it's actually that Umar radiallahu anhu, for example, had this, and the Prophet Muhammad said about him is that kana fil umma mukallimin, that amongst the people there are those who are spoken to. And he mentioned that from his ummah, it is Umar. So Umar's like inspired. Now, we've talked about this before at the Majlis. There's 4 different places by which we get inspirations. Right? So where are the 4 different places we get inspirations from?
All the angels, and that's Shaykha.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. So the highest level of inspiration is divine inspiration. When divine inspiration hits the heart, the person feels like they have no choice. They must do this. And no one else can understand why they feel that way. And they can't even understand why they feel that way. They just know I have to do this and nothing's going to stop me. That's a divine inspiration. If it's good and beneficial. The angelic inspiration is different. It's an encouragement to something good and beneficial. but they feel like they have choice, and they do have choice, and they think about it like, I think this is a good thing to do, and I should probably do it, right? And it may come out of nowhere. It just, like, for them, it comes out of nowhere. They're doing something very different. All of a sudden, they feel like maybe they should do this, and it's good, and it's beneficial, and it's good for them, or it's protective in some way. These come from angels. The satanic inspiration is always, it's not a good one. And it's very deceptive because it always tries to wear the clothing of something justified and right, but it is leading someone to something bad and harmful. And we talked about this. We say like the 5 different doors of shaitan that he tempts us with. So if our thoughts, we find in them doubts about our religion, about ourselves, about God, desires, as a review, like something that's a temptation in our desires, something that is, well, actually, let me ask for those of you who are in class all the time. There's doubts and desires. What are despair? That's right. Giving up. You're doing something good. Why are you trying to do it? Why are you trying to make Tawbah? Why are you trying to do anything? Like, it's just despair. There's no point. Stop trying. Stop. You're not going to do it. It's not going to succeed. This thing that this is one of the traps of shaitan is despair. Just give up on something good. There's one that's kind of a very different energy than despair that the shaitan uses.
Present?
It's usually connected. The despair will usually connect to huzn. Huzn can be sadness is normal state, but shaitan will try to take that sadness and move it to somewhere harmful, where you can take sadness and move it to somewhere beneficial. What about what other one? It's a very different energy state than despair. Destructiveness. So anger can be productive. Anger can be constructive. Anger can fix things and build things. Anger, if you have, they say anger in the right place, again, it shows up as generosity, magnanimity, forgiveness. It shows up as actually energy put in good directions, healing, productive, constructive directions. Anger from shaitan is usually destructive. Tear it all down, break it down, destroy it. That's a satanic inspiration. And then the last one, which is the hardest, I think, to detect, because it always speaks in the language of I'm telling you something good and beneficial, but behind it is actually something that's not good and beneficial. It shows up as a false advisor. And this is delusion. Okay, so and that's the hardest one to understand because it will have all kinds of righteous justifications and reasons, right? Like you should do this because this is this and this and this, but behind it is actually very depth is delusion. And one of the ways, like our teachers have said in the past, to detect it is an inspiration to do good, something good. He said that delusion will have a contraction associated with it, an internal state of almost like an anxiety with it, right? It's a contraction, whereas inspiration is more of like an opening, something that's actually truly beneficial. But as an example, what's an example of an easy delusion? The most common delusion in Muslim community life. One of the most common delusions in Muslim community life.
But I have to feel that I must be good.
Well, in a personal level, a delusion is if I'm feeling good, then I must be good. Right? But I'm talking about on a community level, it's more like you should be president. You'll fix everything that's wrong here if you're just president. You'll be able to get this thing going. So it usually tells a person to take authority and be in charge of others so that you can fix things, so that you can make things better, right? And it's what's really interesting is that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he actually said this about leadership in particular. He said, we do not give this matter to people who ask for it. So if you didn't even verbally ask for it, but inside of you is like, I want to be like, an authority over others, that's the wrong intention. If the intention is, I want to be of service, I want to help, that's good. That's not looking for a status or title. It's just looking to help. And I don't have it with me right now, but maybe one of you guys have seen it. There's a beautiful statement from Umar radiallahu anhu about like, he wants to find leaders who, when they're with the people, they're just like the people, right? Like if they're put in a position of authority, you can't tell any difference between them and the rest of the people. And if they are put in, if they don't have a position amongst the people, then they're as if they're the leaders. Meaning, like, there's a person who takes a sense of ownership and help, even if they don't have title. There's people who they will only help a cause if they're elected with a title. And this is a person who is going to have this sense of responsibility and service and taking care of things as if they're in charge, even though they're not in charge. So this is, I know it's a tangent, a huge tangent. We're just talking about the 4 different inspirations. And then one of these categories, but delusion is an important one for us to think about for ourselves and reflect on for ourselves, and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from following delusions. And then the last one was our nafs. So basically the nafs is whatever state the nafs is in, that's the hawa, or the voice of the nafs will whisper to us in that. So when the nafs is in a negative, is in a bad state, it's absorbed a lot of satanic messaging. The nafs will tell us to do all the same things that shaitan tells us. If the nafs is in a repenting state, it will be, right, a nafs al-lawwama. It will actually say, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. Go say sorry, right? So the nafs will be the one to help us fix things after we've messed up. And then if it's in a really good state, if it's in like the highest state, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ alluded to this, it will only tell us to do that which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It will only command us to good. And that's because the nafs is in the highest state. And so the nafs al-mutma'inna is one that is pleased with Allah, and Allah is pleased with it. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, none of you have truly believed until your nafs commands you to do what I have come with. So when the nafs is telling you like to do the sunnah, then you know it's in a good place. Or it's at that time maybe that it's actually telling you to, inshallah, in that moment, maybe you're in a good hal, for example. Okay. So amongst the ummah, there are people who are spoken to. Which one of these inspirations do you think he's referring to? What was that? Divine and the angels. Yeah. Like they're directed constantly in a good, and not only in a good, in like usually the best of directions. Imam ibn Ajiba mentions that Umar is from those who are honored with the realities of this inscription and the meanings of Kitabun Marqum. And he says, whoever is like that is spoken to from the direction of Al-Haq, Allah. So here it's specifically the divine inspiration that is being referred to. Al-Jariri, he said that inscription is that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has inscribed on the hearts of his servants by what has been decreed for them in pre-eternity from happiness or wretchedness, though he says, through it, the secrets of his servants are hidden, and yet it is zahir, it's on there, it's apparent upon their skeletons or their bodies. And he says there's a hadith that exemplifies this. It's probably, I think I would just kind of connects to what I was on my right here. It connects to the conversation we were having. This hadith is really beautiful. It's actually really beautiful because we think a lot of times we're in control of everything, and you know, like enough we have signs in our life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specified for us some certain things in our journeys. So there's a narration of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kullun muyassarun lima khuliqa lah. Everyone is eased towards that which they were created for. Right? Have you ever seen someone who's able to do something that's completely beyond your capacity, and you're like, I don't know how they do that, right? Like they make it look easy. And then they look to your life and they're like, I don't know how you do that. And we're just different. We've been eased towards very particular things that Allah has designed for us with wisdom, with ultimate wisdom. And I think for that reason, I think it's really important for people to never feel like, why does my life look so different from most other people's lives? If you're doing something absolutely haram, okay, then you can think that. But if you're just living a life where you're finding yourself with people and places, and you're bringing about khair and benefit, and where you're the only Muslim in the room, or you're the only voice in the room that's like moving something towards khair or towards benefit, then just know Allah has designed for you an amazing, unique journey, a very amazing, unique journey. And it doesn't look like anyone else's because no one else can do what you're doing. So it's actually it's a blessing. It's as lonely as it might feel when you're in a place like that. It's also a blessing. There's a beautiful, the reminder for people who find themselves in places like this is قم حيث أقامك الله. Stand where God has placed you. God has placed you somewhere. That's where He stand. And there's a way that you can stand in that place and do it right. There's a wajib al-waqt for all of us. There's the immediate need and obligation of where I'm standing, and I'm going to fulfill that. And usually when I fulfill that, the next thing becomes unlocked, and the next thing becomes unlocked, and the next thing becomes unlocked. And we could never have seen in the first step that at the end of this, there's this other thing. We could have never seen it. Right, but just it's the right step in the current moment that Allah is asking us to take. He says, Imam Ibn Majib says, in summary, Kitab al-Marqum is what includes everyone in pre-eternity. If you were inscribed with happiness, you are among the Aliyin, and if you were inscribed with wretchedness, then you're in the Sijjin. And he says, and you have a ta'liq for the book, for the Kitab al-Marqum in the Sijjin, if you're from there, and you have the Kitab al-Marqum in the Aliyin, if you were from there. He says, the Muqarrabun witnessed this reality with the knowledge of their contemplation, their tafakkur, also through unveilings of secrets to them, and they might speak about it in a state where they're somehow overwhelmed, or they're in a state of spiritual ecstasy. So they might actually say certain things they shouldn't say. They see certain things, and Allah has revealed certain things, but normally they hide those gifts from God. But in a state of ecstasy, jadb, they might actually say certain things they shouldn't say. And so here's the complete hadith, and this is what the Prophet Muhammad said, talks about when he says, قَدْ كَانَ فِي الْأُمَمْ مُكَلِّمُونَ وَإِنْ يَكُنْ فِي أُمَّتِي فَعُمَرٌ. So from the different nations, there are those who are spoken to, and if it was from my nation, then it's Umar. So again, this is not a new concept. Alhamdulillah, this is an old concept. And the muqarribun he says, are people of both fana and baqa, meaning they have an effacement in God, and they have a sustaining, a grounded state of sustenance in God as well. And then he says the abrar are in bliss, and here the righteous, in the commentary here is the bliss of obedience, and speaking and calling upon Allah. This is munajah. Upon the couches of the stations in which they look at that which Allah is doing with them. So again, the higher, I shouldn't say realized, but the raised spiritual station is not what am I going to do today, but what is Allah doing with me today? And Imam al-Qushayri, he mentions that the gazing is in paradise. The allegory is a gazing in what is paradise-like gardens. So this is the gazing of the heart, the spirit, the secret, and the heart. And he says each one of them has a specific blissful garden. And again, this is above my pay grade. These are words of scholars, and I just enjoy them, and I just know it exists. But so he says maybe their gaze is one of knowledge and not experiential, if it's for the abrar, because the experiential knowledge is for the muqarribin. And he says, if you see their faces, they have the glow of happiness and bliss, and that is what is seen on their faces of love of the divine, and the light of proximity to him. He also mentions that the abrar, the righteous, are the people who, you could say they're wayfarers. They are the sa'irin. They are the people who are walking towards God. They're not there yet. They're just, their path is, I want to get closer to God, so I'm going to take a step, and the next step, and the next step. And he says, they drink from the wine of love. And he says it's pure from contamination of desires, and it's sealed for the hearts of the knowers of God. Imam al-Qushayri, he mentions that the vessels of this drink, of this divine love, are actually the hearts of the pure and the awliya, so the sincere and the awliya, and they're sealed with musk. Again, this is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says, no one drinks from such sealed vessels except the true and the sincere. And he says, those who are the seekers upon the path to God. Whoever loses out in such a drink is mahrum. And then he quotes Ibn Farid's poem, على نفسه فليبكي من ضاع عمره وليس له منها نصيب ولا سهم. Upon himself should cry the one whose life has passed or the one whose life was lost, and he didn't have from it an allotment or share. And what he's referring to here is an allotment or share of this, again, this drink that's being referred to, which is an indication of a person's station. It's the drink of divine love. Imam al-Qushayri, he says that their tanafus, their competition is in, or their racing or their striving is in 5 things. The first one, righteous deeds. The second one, connecting the heart to Allah, having our hearts connected to Allah. The third one is a sense of, here it's not alienation as in like, I can't be amongst you, but it's a detachment from creation. Number 4th is not something we can do on our own. So I was going to say, number 4th, we can put it on the shelf because this is something that God gives certain people. And so for the people who gives this to, it's for them. But the 4th is not something that like, I'm going to intend to do and then just do it. It's if Allah opens a door to that, then that's something that can be done, which is roaming in the malakut, which is the, it's God's kingdom. These are unseen realities within the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the 5th is, again, this is what we're coming back to, is the people who are in a continuation, they're in a state of the continuation of munajah. And munajah is a really, really important way of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a really important way of enjoying his company, knowing he's with us all the time, experiencing that he's actually with us all the time. We're not calling to someone who's far away, and we're not calling to someone who can't hear us, and we're not calling to someone who doesn't want to answer us. So these are all the wasawas, from where, right? We're calling to someone who's 100% aware, who fully knows, who knows what we're going to say before we say it, who inspired us to make the dua to him in the first place or to call to him in the first place. So munajah is the most, you could say it's like one of the most common forms of connection for the Anbiya, who were, especially someone like the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was said to be always in conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was always talking to Allah. So he mentions that, again, this ayn is an allegory. And he says it's the spring of the ocean of divine unicity. And the muqarrabun, they witness or they taste the spring of the ocean of divine unicity. They have, in other words, a very, very deep understanding of Tawheed that goes beyond just the fact that there's only one God, but it's connected to all of what he has created as well, in the sense that nothing in his creation is independent of him. It is all dependent upon him. The tanafus of abrar is for possessing blessings, but the tanafus of the muqarrabin is for the one who blesses. So people who, again, the righteous people, they're going to race towards certain types of gifts, right? So it could be enjoyment in prayer. It could be, we talked about it last time, right? How can enjoyment and worship actually be a veil? Because you're seeking the enjoyment, you're not seeking the one. So, but he says the muqarrabin, their tanafus is actually in the one who blesses. That's who they're seeking. It's not any of the different gifts that he's giving. It's actually him. And then he says, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest, and that is the supreme success. And then he makes dua. Imam ibn Najib ends his allegorical commentary by saying, may Allah make us from the people who strive and race in him and in witnessing him. Ameen. And today, now that we have finished the allegorical commentary for last week, we can go to actual tafsir for this week's verses. Well, yeah, I know. I'm gonna like maybe I'll just do 15 minutes. Yeah, inshallah. Yeah, I'll go for 8 until 8:15. Inshallah, that's my intention. You guys, and Sobia can send me a message if she's on Zoom. She can send me a message if I go over time. So today we're gonna look at, the intention was to actually do the verses 29 through 36. I don't think we're gonna finish, but we can start it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إن الذين أجرموا كانوا من الذين آمنوا يضحكون وإذا مروا بهم يتغامزون وإذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم انقلبوا فكيهين وإذا رأوهم قالوا إن هؤلاء لضالون وما أرسلوا عليهم حافظين فاليوم الذين آمنوا من الكفار يضحكون على الأرائك ينظرون هل ثوب الكفار ما كانوا يفعلون. So after the beautiful descriptions of the people who are going to Jannah and the different levels and blessings of the Abrar versus the Muqarrabun, it goes back to those who were mocking the believers in the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And again, there's a comparison in the surah. Here are the people that you're mocking. This is what Allah is giving them. And look at what you're saying about them. And look at how you're thinking about them. Truly, those who sinned did laugh at those who believed. When they passed them, they would wink at one another. And when they returned to their people, they would return blithely. And when they saw them, they said, truly, these are astray, though they were not sent as guardians over them. So that day, those who believe shall laugh at those who disbelieve. Upon couches gazing, have the disbelievers been requited for that which they used to do. And this is a very strong warning to the people who are making fun of the believers in the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and in general, people who are making fun of believers at any time and treating them with this kind of istihza, like this condescending mockery. So according to some, those who sinned refers to the leaders of the Quraysh who used to laugh and mock several of the more impoverished Muslims. And also in Surah al-Mu'minun, this is also mentioned in verses 109 and 110. Indeed, there was a party of my servants who said, our Lord, we have believed, so forgive us and have mercy upon us. And you are the best of the merciful. And then Allah then says again towards those who are mocking them, but you took them in mockery until you forgot my remembrance, and you used to laugh at them. So this concept of the disbelievers laughing at the believing Muslims and looking down upon them, sometimes in the way that the verses are, the tone of the verses, for people to mock or ridicule or laugh at righteous people very clearly earns the anger of God. This is one of the things that really angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whether it's, I would say whether it's a disbeliever mocking a believing Muslim, or even unfortunately in the Muslim community, if it's Muslims who are mocking other Muslims, right? There are Muslims who make fun of other Muslims. If they see someone in the family start to wear hijab, they'll actually make fun of them and put them down and say, what are you trying to do? Be a grandma amongst us or whatever. They actually mock them and make fun of them and make them feel try to outcast them a little bit. And this is one of the things that really people, there's certain things that earn God's anger. This is clearly one of the things that earns the wrath of God, and it earns the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to look down on people in this way. There's so much description in the mockery, the language in Arabic that's used, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the fact that they would wink at each other. You know what I mean? In their mocking. This is how ugly this type of behavior is towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In terms of Western culture, American culture, anyone who's gone to public high school, it actually encourages a culture of mocking others. and winking at others and winking towards each other. And it's like putting certain people down. And it's how certain people are considered even cool and other people are considered not cool. It's a whole like behavioral pattern that is done to diminish the dignity of certain people. And subhanAllah, this behavioral pattern is something that earns the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think this is something that we need to teach our children. And like this might be in movies, it might be on TV shows, it might be in public high schools, but this is not us. Like this is, if you want to think about a behavioral pattern, that even the word blithely, where it says fakihin, if you look at the translation, both in the Arabic of the root of fakiha and blithely, it's that whatever attitude. It's literally a whatever attitude. It's like walking away from something, but not in response to like an issue, it's in response to people. Right? Like may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and guide us all. But when you read the verses about how Allah speaks about those who mock the Muslims, you're like afraid of the punishment that people who do this are going to get, because it's clearly something displeasing to him. We don't want to be people who do this at all. Alhamdulillah, we're Muslims, but Muslims can do this with other Muslims. May we never make fun of anyone else. May we never mock anyone else. May we never have that tone of like, that condescending, sarcastic wink, wink with someone. No one should feel that way in the company of Muslims. Imam Ibn Ajib also, let me just bring to some of the things that he mentions in this regard. Inna alladhina ajramu, he actually mentions that the crime is actually kufr. So the word that's used in Arabic is jarima. Inna alladhina ajramu, those who sinned. So it's translated here as sinned. The word jarima is crime. It means something like it's a transgression that's been done, right? So these people who have transgressed, Allah is describing them as those who laugh at those who have believed. And Imam Rajiba, he says that in the ladina ajramu, their crime is that their kufr, their disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or their denial of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, Ka Abi Jahl wal Walid wal As. So these were leaders of the Quraysh. And they were specifically, actually, all of these leaders of the Quraysh knew the Prophet Muhammad was the Prophet. They have statements where they've said that we know, but we're not going to follow him. So and so they knew and they laugh. Okay, كانوا من الذين آمنوا, and here he gives the examples. Now, who from the Muslims are they doing this to? Can they do this kind of behavior towards Umar? Can they do this kind of behavior towards the elite of the believers? No, they do this towards what's considered the du'afa, the people who have no social standing. So the people who don't have others to protect them. It's going to be towards Bilal ibn Rabah, a slave. It's going to be towards, he says, Ka Ammar ibn Yasir, right? Came from a slave's family. And Khabbab and Suhaib al-Rumi, who was also taken as a slave. So it's subhanAllah. Oppressors are like this, by the way. When they do the mockery and the little taunting and the whatever, they don't do it with their equals because they're cowards. They don't do it with their equals. They go and find someone that they think is a little bit weaker than them or a lot weaker than them, and that is not in a position to retaliate or do something back without major social consequence or incapacity. So they're doing it with them. It's like the big bullies who find the small guy in the play yard, and that's the one that you're going to come. It's a very cowardly approach. Yeah.
You're saying about the Muslim community too, and
Yeah.
I have seen this in families or just in the Muslim community in general, where it's somebody who's a Muslim identifying as Muslim, but maybe doesn't pray, so they're making fun of someone who prays, or doesn't wear hijab, and so they're making fun of that someone who's wearing hijab. Would you say that's like the same?
It's the same behavior, right? It's not the same people who are there, because the people who did this are kuffar, but it's the same behavior that's displeasing to God, right? So and that's what in the allegorical commentary, Imam Rajib mentions that. And so that's why like this behavior, may we never be people who do this with anyone. That it's literally angering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by the way, in the Muslim families where this happens, many times I've seen it's like the whole like exchanging glances and ha or whatever about a certain person. It's usually a person that for whatever reason, they're not the black sheep, but they don't have standing in their family for whatever reason. I don't know how to describe it. They're the one that everyone kind of like bullies or puts down, right? They're the accepted da'if one that people feel like it's okay to be that way towards. But they wouldn't do it to someone that is of their own level of prominence, if that makes any sense. Right. So it's also, that's what I'm saying, there's like a cowardliness in it, is because like you're doing it to the one that there's not going to be a retaliation. You're not going to face a consequence. That's why you can get away with it. Like beating a child child cannot beat you back, right? So it's a very cowardly thing to do. When we were in college in we used to do MSA tables, right? And we had the tables about Zionism. Literally, the Zionists would wait until all the brothers have left. For whatever reason, maybe they're picking up boards and stuff. And when there's only sisters left, then their guys would come and start arguing with us. And it was just like, you can only argue with women. Like, first off, we're stronger than you. Second, like you don't know Muslim women. But second off, like you literally wait because you're like you have nothing. You can't do this with so this quality is a cowardly, oppressive quality, right? And it's again, it's something that's angering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To the extent that when they passed them, they would wink at one another. It's like يَتَغَامَزُونَ is with their eyes. So this word وَإِذَا انقلبوا إِلَى أَهْلِهِمْ, when they return, فَكِهِينَ. So I just want to go into a little bit about what that means. So the root فَكِهَ is like fukaha is a joke. And there's fakihin, which is translated as blithely, and it's again, it's that attitude of laughing almost, or the whateverness of it. It's disrespectful. Fakihin is how most of the schools of Quranic recitation read it, but the Hafs reads it as fakihin, which means conceited or proud. So fakiha actually is like facetious. It's the root of it is from like this facetiousness. And it comes from a lot of arrogance. So it's all of these meanings combined. It's that conceitedness and that pride and that laughing at and that looking down upon. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam Ibn Ajib is mentioning this about when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ, it shows that Allah is يشير بعضهم إلى بعض بالعين طعنا فيهم وعيبا لهم. So this winking, the subtleties in people's behavior, even in the eye glance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows when a person has wronged another human being, even in a subtle eye glance, right? So what I love about this particular ayah is oppressive people and bullies, they like to get away with it, right? They like to do it, and they like to do it in a way where no one caught them doing it. And Allah is showing you even wink at each other when they're not looking, right? So you guys have seen these like Instagram videos, by the way, of like a Zionist coming up to a protest and then grabbing a protest sign and slamming it against his own head and then saying like, "Why are you guys beating me?" And they're like, "We have it on camera." He's like, so it's like these things where it's here, the camera is actually the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing what they're doing. God knows the subtleties of their arrogance and the subtleties of their condescension. He says the disbelievers deemed the believers to be astray for following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So, and when they saw them, they said, "These people are truly astray." And what it indicates is that the disbelievers are not fit to judge the actions of the believers. You are not placed over them as guardians, right? I'll get to the next verse. Though they were not sent, it's like you are not the boss of them, and you're not in charge of them, and you have no position to judge what they're doing right or wrong. You need to worry about your own soul. Like your job is to worry about your nafs, not about them to say they're astray. Are you guided rightly yourself? This verse, also verse number 33, implies that the disbelievers are not fit to judge the actions of the believers. Some people would translate the word hafidhin not as judges, but as witnesses, meaning you should not arrogate to yourself the ability to bear witness against believers. Because in the hereafter, it's going to be the believers who actually bear witness against you. So that day is the day of resurrection. And the believers will actually laugh while they're sitting upon couches. Now, this part where it says upon couches gazing is similar to verse number 23, which describes them upon couches gazing. Like this, one of the blessings in paradise for the people of paradise is they will be on couches gazing. But now it's repeated, the same concept. They're going to be on couches gazing, but now they're gazing at the punishments of the people who used to laugh at them. And while they're on couches gazing at them, they'll actually be laughing at them. Those who used to make fun of you, now they're going to be the ones that everyone looks at and laughs at. So again, mockery, this concept of mockery is the root of other evils. People who mock the truth, people who mock other human beings, people who mock the rights and dignity of other human beings, the great crimes of history, when you think about hate and bigotry, it's rooted in this sense of diminishing the humanity in another human, in someone else, the diminishing, like not being able to honor a fellow human being as an equal human being. That's where mockery really comes from, and that's where hatred comes from, and that's even where genocide comes from, because it's the highest level of that attitude. Like, you are so worth nothing to me that I can wipe your entire people out. So you can only imagine the punishment. Like if Allah is talking about winking being something that gets punished in paradise, in hellfire, sorry, that gets punished in hellfire. Can you imagine what the punishment of what we're seeing right now is? And then there's so much more to be said, but I'm just going to close because of time, and we'll maybe be able to continue the last few verses with more detailed commentary and allegorical commentary next week. But there's just something I wanted to point out, which is that when it comes to this question, have the disbelievers هل ثوب الكفار ما كانوا يعملون? And it looks like we have some. Thank you so much. Inshallah, I got the reminder on time. So this very quickly. The answer to this question, do you guys think it's yes or no? Have the disbelievers, after you see that they are going to be punished in hellfire, people in paradise that they used to make fun of are going to be sitting on comfortable couches, gazing at them and laughing at them. Have the disbelievers been requited for that which they used to do? Yes? Yeah, from the point of view of their crimes, yes, they've gotten exactly what they deserve. However, he says on the one hand, the disbelievers have been requited with punishment for evil deeds they committed. On the other hand, they have not been requited for what only appear to be good deeds, since they are those whose deeds have come to nothing in this world and in the hereafter. So a lot of oppressors, terrible oppressors, will do all of this terrible stuff, and then they might donate to a good cause over here, and they might have a photo op over there, and they might do these other things. What about their good deed? Did they get any reward for their good? They get no reward for their good because it wasn't actually good. And there's a bunch of commentary about why the good that these tyrants did never gets counted for them as hasanat. And it's actually the people who are the most deluded in their deeds because they think I did some good and I'm going to see something because of it. No, you didn't. You actually, in the end, this is called Surah al-Mutaffifīn. These are people whose fraudulent behavior with others led them to actually defraud themselves. They were the ones who were the ultimate loss of their own fraud. And they are the ones who, they suffer from their fraud. They suffer from the fact that they defrauded even their own selves. And again, from the Quranic perspective, only deeds that are accompanied by belief in Allah, His prophets, His revelations, His angels can truly be called good or righteous. And the phrase perform righteous deeds occurs over 50 times in the Quran. right? عملوا الصالحات over 50 times. It's a big deal. It's always accompanied by some mention in the belief in God. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. It's always connected to belief. So this concludes like the tafsir, although I'll mention certain details next week that I didn't get to say this week. And we'll do the allegory as well next week, and have completed Surah al-Mutaffifīn. Now, the assignment for this week actually goes back to the allegorical commentary we took at the beginning of class, and that is about the significance of munajah, right? About calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that in the 5 different ways that the tanafus takes place, one of them is in the continuation of munajah. So munajah as a translation is to call upon God. And it doesn't mean you have to ask for anything. You can literally say, God, it's been a difficult day today. And you're just talking to him. God, I don't know what to do with my kids. God, the traffic is bad. Like it can be whatever is there, but to try to habituate ourselves in conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know with the feeling that he is with me. He's 100% with me. He's closer to me than I am to myself. So, which is a hard thing for us to conceptualize. And if we are feeling a state of need, to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we took this in the ladies' halaqah. I'm just going to connect it because it's somewhat connected. To actually recite Surah al-Fatiha and make dua afterwards for whatever that case is, and use that as, okay, if I'm feeling a need, I'm just in conversation with God, but now I really feel a strong need for something, I'm going to recite Surah al-Fatiha and I'm going to ask for my need. And al-Fatiha is al-Fatiha. It's the opening, it unlocks things, it's the miftah. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to enjoy munajah this week, and we're going to forget it, by the way. We're going to forget to do this assignment as soon as we leave. So that's why I'm attaching it to Surah al-Fatiha during times of need, because sometimes we forget until we need. Then once we need, remember the assignment and and then it, kind of brings it back into our lives. So that will be for this week, and inshallah, everyone, yeah.
Having a hard time with the people laughing at those who disbelieve about deceiving. This doesn't seem like an activity of Jannah to do. And so I'm wondering if I just have to get over that, or if it's a different kind of laughing, that they're just elated at their situation and sort of not, like, in other words, it's not a mockery in return. It's maybe a different kind of laughing. I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, in the like Imam Ibn Ajiba mentions that in Jannah, says that between Jannah and hellfire there are windows, and the people of paradise, when they're sitting on these couches, if they want to see the affair of the people in hellfire, there's these windows they can actually see what's happening. What it's being described is the people who got laughed at are getting the last laugh. And I understand what you're saying in terms of, it doesn't seem like in Jannah you're going to be so busy with like the blessings of paradise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself and the prophets and whatever. But at the same time, I'm going to say that, like, again, certain verses in the Quran, maybe they made less cognitive or conceptual sense to me until this genocide has happened in Palestine. And in Palestine, I don't know about you guys, but there are certain people that I can see myself smiling to see what they get. Astaghfirullah. That's where I'm at. Because an entire population got wiped out with impunity. And so I don't have a problem with that. So I'm just gonna say, like, I don't have a problem smiling at the fact that this shaitan who's in charge, who's supposedly a head of state, Netanyahu, will one day get his. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that would make me smile, to be honest. Astaghfirullah, that's where I'm at.
So the other question is, when, like, with the modern culture of memes and things like that, where people upload their videos of themselves to make fun of
Themselves?
or of others, like, that's very similar, right?
Yeah.
And even if it's like the intention is for entertainment,
Mhm.
but we can get sucked into that really easily, right? And still, like, it's still making fun of people, maybe at their expense, even because we don't really know.
Mhm.
I don't know, I just. I think-
So I was gonna say, like, I think that there's a difference between laughing at someone and laughing with someone.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like, if I'm with friends and something silly or weird or whatever comes up, I'll share it with them and we laugh. And they're laughing with me, at me, but it's because I feel safe with them. And I don't feel like it's like at my expense type of thing. Like it's where I'm not taking myself so seriously. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But then there's a very big difference between like videotaping someone somewhere and putting that online. No, that's terrible. We don't have permission to do things like that and to share things that are embarrassing about other people like that. It's for the purpose of just mocking them and making fun of them. So yeah. Yeah, that would be highly, highly like problematic. But yeah, joking and stuff, it's an important subject even in terms of fiqh, like what are the limits of joking? And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like talks about those who are the reward or the good character of the one who doesn't lie even when they're joking. So when they make their jokes, they do truthful jokes rather than like pranks. Like a prank that hurts someone is I would say is outside of because that's at someone's expense versus a prank that is endearing or elevates someone. There's different kinds, right? So like yeah, we could get into examples maybe after class, but I think there's an etiquette to joking. And again, the culture we live in does not follow that etiquette. So it's what is deemed normal to make fun of people and everyone makes someone feel bad and ostracized. That's not normal for us at all. And it's like we like that's just not becoming of Muslims. And we live in a culture where they don't make a big deal about it, but we should be cognizant that we live in a culture that doesn't make a big deal about hurting people's feelings like that. If Allah is talking about the winks, that people make when they're like mocking other people or look down at someone else, then you can imagine anything more than that with what that is an indication of. Also, I was gonna say, like, again, this is not tafsir, this is just the idea of the people in Jannah laughing at the people in hellfire. Now, these are the people in hellfire who used to laugh at the believers, but I don't think their laughter is Allahu Alam. It's not necessarily this. The people who laughed in this dunya was mockery, right? People who might laugh in the next life when they're looking at what's happening to them is likely just you got what you deserved. Like Allahu Alam. I'll look more into that for you, inshallah, see what I can find for next week. So, okay, we'll close. And the assignment, guys, we got the assignment? Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى واجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم آمين يا رب العالمين اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. O God, give us success to attain what you love and are pleased with. Make us amongst your felicitous servants. Allow us to die on the statement of guidance. Teach us what will benefit us and give us the success to act upon what you have taught us. Make that in which we are engaged pure and devoted to your noble face. Ameen, O Lord of the worlds. O God, make this gathering of ours a gathering enveloped in mercy, and our parting thereafter a parting of our sins purged and forgiven. Not one of us wretched or deprived. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and upon his noble family, companions, and followers. Ameen.